In this video, we're going to be looking at the concept of cross elasticity of demand. I'm assuming that you know about price elasticity of demand. Now, the definition of cross elasticity of demand is the responsiveness of demand for one good to a change in the price of another good. And just like with price elasticity, if we get a big response, normally more than one, it means it's elastic. And if we get a small response, then that means it's inelastic. So the formula is the percentage change in the quantity demanded of good X divided by the percentage change in price of good Y. So for example, the goods could be substitutes. So my example here, I've got roast chicken, roast beef and roast lamb. So if the price of roast beef goes up, then consumers are likely to buy less roast beef and more roast lamb or roast chicken. So one is going up and the other is going up. So if we divide a positive by a positive, we get a positive. So on a calculation, if we see a positive result, that means that the goods are substitutes. Now, what about if we look, say, at foreign holidays and air flights? Now, imagine that the cost of foreign holidays goes down. Well, that means we're going to be going on more foreign holidays, and to get there, we're going to need to increase our demand for air flights. So our increase in demand is caused by a decrease in the price of foreign holidays. So that's a plus over a minus. If we divide a plus by a minus, we get a minus. So if we see on a calculation a minus sign, then there's a fair chance that the two goods are complements. Now, it may well be that we change the price of one good and the quantity of the other good does not change at all. So my example here is safari holidays and trouser presses. They're unlikely to be linked in the slightest. So a change in the price of safari holidays is not likely to have any impact on demand for trouser presses. Naught over anything gives us the result of naught. So if we get a result of naught, that means goods are independent. So there we go. Summarize that here. Positive, substitutes, negative, complements, zero, independent. Now, as with every other type of elasticity, if we get a high value, then that means it's elastic. So in the case of cross elasticity of demand, a high value means that the goods are close complements or close substitutes, and low values mean that they're not close. They might be complements or substitutes, but they're less strong. And again, as with everything else, that figure 1 is normally used where you can say, okay, it's a close complement or it's a close substitute. Figures close to 0 means they're virtually independent. Let's do a worked example. So this data is reasonably accurate. I've changed it slightly to make the calculations easier. The price of an Xbox Series X is currently around about £500, and that's what we're going to be changing. Now, in 2023, about 2 million Wii's were sold, and about 2.5 million EAFC games were sold in the UK. And on average in the UK, 140 grams of cheese were sold per person. So we're going to be assuming that the price of an Xbox goes up from £500 to £600. That is a 20% rise. Now, if we look at the number of Wii's, well, let's imagine that 20% increase in the price of Xboxes turns people away from the Xbox. They're going to be consuming fewer Xboxes and they're going to be buying Wii's instead. Which is basically what you'd write in your analysis. Well, let's imagine that the quantity of Wii sold goes up from 2 million to 3 million. That's an increase of 50%. So there's our formula: percentage change in quantity demanded of good X, in this case Wii's, divided by the percentage change in the price of good Y, in this case Xbox Series X. 50 over 20 gives us a result of 2.5. So that means that it's a substitute because it's positive, and it's a close substitute, a near substitute, because we get a figure of greater than 1. So our second example, around 2.5 million EAFC games were sold in 2023, but as a result of that increase in the price of the Series X, fewer EAFC games are going to be sold. So the quantity sold goes down to 2.25 million. Now that is a decrease of 10%. So again, we bring in the formula. It's a decrease of 10%, so that's minus 10 as a result of the increase in the price of the Xbox of 20%. Minus 10 over 20 gives us an answer of minus 0.5. The fact that it's a minus sign tells us it's a complement, but it's not that strong a complement because it's below 1. So that would be a weak complement. So our final example is cheese. I think we know what the answer is going to be here. Well, as a result of that increase in the price of the Xbox, the consumption of cheese is completely unchanged. So 0 over 20% gives us a figure of 0. So that means that Xboxes and cheese are independent. Well, who'd have thought that? So in exams, the basic way you do your analysis is you talk through the increase or the change in price. You then talk through basically how it affects that good, and then you talk about the impact of that on the other good. Question is, beware of that word "and." So this again was a question that came from a long time ago when we had lots of papers each year, and it's about the impact of the price of beef and the demand for chicken and fish. Well, I think most people would get the KAA mark to give you a definition of cross elasticity. They turn around and say, okay, if the price of beef goes up, then chicken and fish are substitutes, so the demand for those is going to rise, so it's going to be a positive figure. Great, they've mopped up the KAA marks, but this was an evaluation question. That word discuss means it's an evaluation. Now, if you think about it, if say you have your Sunday dinner, you might be thinking, well, shall I have roast beef? Now, if the price of roast beef goes too high, you might, for example, buy chicken. Chicken is a close substitute for beef. It's unlikely that you're going to move your roast dinner to fish. So there is likely to be an increase in demand for fish. It tells you there, for example, that people might be selling, McDonald's might be selling fillets of fish rather than, say, the quarter pounder. But that's a pretty niche sort of situation. So one of them would be a stronger substitute than the other one. So your evaluation would be chicken is likely to have a higher cross elasticity than fish because it is a stronger substitute. Now, that's all really we want to say about cross elasticity of demand.